Hello and welcome to StratNewsGlobal. In our discussion today, I have with me Mr. MJ Akbar, one of India's foremost strategic thinkers, of course author, journalist, and many parts to his personality. But today I'm going to ask him questions about President Donald Trump taking office in less than a week in the United States, and the effect that presidency is going to have on the globe and the international relations across the globe. So thank you for coming in and again sparing your time, sir, and always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So, less than 5 days later or a week later, Donald Trump is going to be in office. And the world is, of course, has a mixed reaction. Some are waiting with excitement, anticipation. Some are dreading him coming into the White House and his policies. How do you see a second Donald Trump term in the White House?
Well, the second Donald Trump White House will see the same Donald Trump, but a different White House.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah. Donald Trump by temperament is what he is.
What he is, yeah.
Now, by almost instinctively now, when you think of his name or think of his political behavior, you think of turbulence.
Right.
But I do believe that he uses turbulence as a strategy.
Okay.
In order to establish calm on his terms.
Right. Okay.
He does not have a vested interest in turbulence as a permanent fact. For example, just today we heard his triumphant claims of having established some degree of calm in West Asia.
Yeah, Israel-Gaza truce.
Yeah. Which means he was not invested in war.
Right.
As a continuing fact.
Sure.
If anything, I would say that the Democratic White House seemed to have less interest in creating the resolution than in establishing whatever political points it wanted to establish. You will see that when the record is examined, right, the big question that will be asked is, why did this not happen before?
Right.
The terms were known. Nothing significantly, I think, has changed in the actual agreement than the ideas that have been floating around for months, many months.
Sure.
So I don't know how many thousand people, innocent people on all sides, have become victims of indolence or indifference or some strategic game that we cannot comprehend.
Yeah, which was there in the previous White House.
Yeah. And you must have heard and you must acknowledge that even the Biden White House, which is no friend of Mr. Trump, has acknowledged that his emissary had a role to play.
Which is a good beginning to his.
So I really do think that he is interested in establishing peace on what would be his White House's terms. He will try and do that almost immediately.
Right.
He loves breaking taboos because he doesn't recognize them. Why was it taboo to meet Putin?
Exactly.
Right? So who took the fundamentalist position? Okay. You may agree with what Putin did in Ukraine, or you may not agree. But is the way forward
not meeting him?
Not meeting
or
him.
not talking to
or
him?
not talking to him. Can you have a resolution to Ukraine by simply deciding that President Putin doesn't exist?
Yeah.
See, it's not feasible.
Yeah. So it's practical, I think.
It's practical. And therefore, I think the 4 years of Trump will be indeed less dramatic than his opponent's thing.
Right.
And more dramatic than what would be called the calmists.
Okay. Those who expect no turbulence.
No turbulence at all.
Exactly.
Think.
Right. But also like that interesting point that you made, that it's the same Donald Trump but a different White House. So in that context, one has read reports, analysis, that he's drained the swamp, as it were, of the deep state influence, and he will continue to do that in Washington, D.C. Is that one of his key result areas that he's looking for?
I don't know if anyone can drain the swamp in any major capital.
Okay.
There is a deep state
Everywhere.
everywhere.
Right.
Where there is a state, there is a deep state.
Sure.
Right? People who live in essentially believe they live above the politics of it in order to protect, defend their version of what the state is.
Right.
But why would this White House be different? You know, the most important element of the next 4 years of Donald Trump is the fact that he is not in a position to seek re-election.
Yes.
Now, that is either a liberation or an opportunity for potential chaos. Right? Because if you don't care, then you
Then
can
do anything
become
you
careless.
want. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right? And that's very dangerous for a superpower of America's proportions. But I don't really believe that.
No, I think he would like to leave a legacy behind.
He is conscious of history. He would be more conscious of history this time around than his first 4 years, when first 2 years were spent actually searching for the keys to the White House.
Right. Exactly. So I think he's more experienced, more calmer, like you mentioned. But I'll also pick up the thread on the nation state a little later. But to continue what the White House would look like, one of the worries amongst the leftist dispensation the world over is Elon Musk's disproportionate influence over Trump or Trump administration that is likely to be there. Some people have called him an interfering sort. Some people have called him that he is completely out of control. So what would your assessment be?
You have to first understand that gratitude in politics has a very short shelf life.
Yes, you're speaking from, you're covering the entire political spectrum for so many years in India and elsewhere.
Yeah.
Yes.
So while I'm sure Donald Trump is very deeply grateful for 260 million or whatever dollars that Trump put in, I don't think Trump is going to permit anyone to disrupt or destabilize his term in office. Anyone, friend, certainly not foe.
Yes.
And I find most interesting is nobody has got into office as yet, as we speak.
Sure.
But the challenge to Musk has already come from within MAGA movement, within the Trump movement, as Steve Bannon.
Yes.
Now, do you seriously think that Mr. Steve would have gone as far as he did in his use of adjectives,
yes, against Musk,
epithets,
yes,
without Donald Trump fully in the know?
No, I don't think so. But you're right, absolutely.
So everything has a reaction.
There'll be competing interest within the administration, like any other administration.
Not only that, there are limits within which you have to operate in government.
Right.
The government of the United States of America is not a corporate entity owned by you.
Sure. It's it's much larger than that.
Much larger, and it is much more complex.
True. Absolutely.
I also, the responsibility given to the two mavericks,
Exactly.
Musk and
Yes.
Ramaswamy,
Right.
is basically how to cut the size of government, not how to run government.
Or even change the nature of the government.
Change the nature of the plot the direction of government.
No.
It is only to cut the size.
Yes. The wasteful expenditure.
Yeah,
as they
which
call
is
it.
a private sector operation.
And that's why they've been given that.
Yeah, so you bring that private sector axe
Right.
to government and cut out waste.
Sure.
It's an intelligent decision.
It is. Yeah.
So,
he didn't bring them as Secretary of State.
Yeah,
or
exactly. He didn't give them any department.
No executive powers really, in that sense, for the running the administration or the policy.
No, there are no executive powers.
Yeah, exactly.
In fact, they cannot, in fact, even cut the government.
Sure.
All they can do is recommend.
Recommend, exactly. They have to give it to the White House and then they will do it. Yeah, I mean, very interesting. And Same principles might apply, as you said, what he has done with West Asia, I mean, with Israel and Gaza right now as we speak. Maybe he will bring the same principles to apply in Russia-Ukraine conflict. Like
yeah, I think so. Basically, he says we have to discuss and talk our way forward. And then I think when you do negotiations, you use all options, including heavyweight option, that look, if you don't agree and if you don't be reasonable, then you're taking things to an escalation point which might be dangerous for everyone, not least for you. So which is a rational point at which we can get both sides at least into some form of agreement. So at least the violence of war is stopped. And then let's see how
the
far
steps will follow, I suppose. So before I come to India and the kind of reaction or kind of relationship India should expect, the dragon in the room, if not the elephant in the room, is China and US-China relationship, or what Trump administration will do with China. What do you expect there?
The first clues are already in. Not many people have noticed, but if you look at the testimony given by the incoming CIA chief,
yes,
or Marco
or
Rubio,
the NSA also,
Rubio,
yes,
and others, you already can see that it is China which is at the top of the mind in terms of threat perception.
right.
And they see threat perception not merely in terms of conventional military threat perception, but also in terms of where the future next 10 years.
The technology wars.
Yeah. China itself, what I find very fascinating is in the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, China has upped the scale of announcements.
Okay.
For example, the solar dam in space.
Right.
Its capacities in space, things that might have once been considered too secret. It is now opening up and telling the world that this is what its capabilities are.
Right.
Its capabilities, its direct challenge to Starlinks, for example. It's saying that we have the capacity to jam it.
Right.
Now, why would it make these things known at this particular moment?
They could have done it earlier, or they could have done it in the future.
Yeah.
But they have done it now.
They have done it now because they are also preparing the grounds of telling their people they have to negotiate with that don't underestimate us.
Exactly.
Right? You either treat us as an equal and then we can find a way forward, or here it is.
Confrontation is inevitable.
Yeah.
Do you think what old Obama idea of the G2, where US and China are the preeminent powers and everybody else is a supplicant of, or you sort of pay tributes to these two powers, that China would be comfortable with?
First, Mr. Obama, I think his problem in life was that he was too fond of his own intellect.
And his rhetoric or his terms or the kind of things that he came
and
out with.
as if because he had thought something, it was actually going to happen because it was such a good idea. Right? The world is not controlled by such perceptions. The idea that what is G2? G2 is only an idea which is as boring as the 1950s when two superpowers decided that they divide the world. Right? So what is innovative about it?
Right.
We have seen this idea collapse.
Correct.
Right? These, when giants become self-obsessed, they find that they can't walk.
Yeah.
And I'm also reminded of the metaphor of the medieval knight. They had so much armor, they were immobile.
They couldn't move.
They couldn't move. And eventually, the 13th century Mongols came with velvet and leather jackets and high-speed horses and finished them.
So agility is far better.
It's agility of both capacity and mind.
Right.
Right. You can't be stuck in the present world. Never forget that this is an era in which the Democrats have played a very important part. This is an era of democracy.
Sure.
And democracy, implicit in the idea of democracy, is that size is relevant, but not as relevant as the right to equality.
True. Under democracy, and which is thriving everywhere else.
So nations will exercise their independent views and their rights and their capacities. And anyone who thinks that one or two people can be the policemen of the world, they have not understood the world.
True, or the politics of it.
Yeah.
Certainly. I need to take a break. Don't go away. I am in conversation with Mr. MJ Akbar. But after this break, we'll come back and discuss India's relationship with the new US administration, and of course what effect that US administration will probably have on Europe. And of course, one theoretical or maybe a practical discussion on evolution of the nation state. Don't go away. Welcome back. I am in conversation with MJ Akbar on the incoming Trump administration and its effect on the globe. So we were talking about what would happen with Ukraine, what will happen with China as far as US is concerned. But the most important question is, how should India see this incoming US administration?
India has to see any administration first from the periscope of Indian interests. And Indian interests are very, I think now under Prime Minister Modi's very realistic vision. Vision has been claimed by many people, but realism
it is not rooted in realism in many cases.
In many cases. Yeah. His vision is rooted in realism. And therefore he has created a very significant geography for India's vision. And it is the arc of neighborhood, which is the primary arc, which is basically, which includes Quad, which includes West Asia. After all, never forget that the Indian Navy is now operating in the Red Sea.
It does.
Operating militarily.
Yes, it is.
In the Red Sea.
Yeah.
So it is not something that, all paper and no action.
Sure.
So his also, the range of India's interests lie primarily also in the continuing development of India towards an economic goal and towards an equitable economic goal, which can be a reality by 2047.
Sure.
So whatever circumstances and whatever alliances are most helpful towards creation of that economic and equitable horizon will be primarily the drivers of India's foreign policy.
Right.
India's domestic policy and India's foreign policy, certainly under Prime Minister Modi. And to that extent, powers and superpowers will have to fit in also within the Indian framework of India's vision and need.
True.
So we will have to see whether the Trump White House, where its interests match India's interests. One obvious question, which said or unsaid, is that where will a Trump confrontation with China be helpful towards India as a byproduct?
Exactly.
Right?
Some collateral damage or help either way.
Yeah. I think that is not perhaps the best way to look at the situation. India and Washington, India and America will have to find their own bilateral way forward in order to create the most productive relationship. We are not dependent on each other
Right.
for our other binary.
No, exactly. So, the Russia equation also comes in. India-Russia equation many a times amongst among the think tankers and the intellectuals in the US. They always try to say that, get away from Russia, which India will not do.
Why should we get away from anyone?
Exactly.
Why do you ask us to get away from Japan?
Right. Exactly.
Right? I mean, our friendship with India has not meant that we are not part of Quad.
Exactly.
So, this is, it's very foolish to think that India cannot take 2 steps with 2 feet.
Exactly.
Right?
So I suppose
We
they will
walk
be
with
more
2
practical.
feet.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I think this argument has been put to rest.
Yeah.
And people now recognize India's ability to navigate its way forward, keeping the relationship with all friends in mind.
Exactly.
The good thing about India is that India has not sought enmity, or India has not sought a negativity towards any particular
Right.
area. India has been very strong in the defense of its strategic interests, in its defense of the terrorist offense,
Right.
very often manufactured within one neighboring country to
Yes.
our west.
Correct.
And
And encouraged by the one on the north.
well, and in a kind of oblique way, because the North is extremely good friends
Exactly.
with the West.
Yes.
India still has the capacity and I think the ability to show that it can deal with the strategic requirements of having some form of a bridge with Afghanistan.
Right, absolutely.
So, it's a non-sentimental approach to policy.
Sure.
We have good relations with Iran. Should we, in our pursuit of friendship with America, abandon our relationship with Iran?
No.
We won't.
We won't, and we didn't. Yeah.
And we didn't. Let's be very clear.
Right.
In search of our friendship with Iran, shall we abandon our relationship with Israel? No way.
Correct.
Shall we, in search of our relationship with Israel, shall we abandon our relationship with West Asia, Arab West Asia? No way.
No way. Yeah.
But India is an intelligent power.
Right.
I think that is the term
Which
should,
actually fits into what our policies are right now. Yeah.
exactly. It's an intelligent power which can actually, through the application of intelligence, create a multiple in its capability.
Which is very evident actually, and going forward it will only get strengthened as that ability and that demand from other nations to be for India to be involved in anything that they do.
Yeah.
You're right, absolutely. But I want to pick up the thread from what you spoke about nation states. 2024 was an election year in many ways across the world, and some analysis was done at how many incumbents have been got defeated. Only Prime Minister Modi managed to come back to power in India, and of course, in some places the notion of nation state was being questioned. Now we hear the leader of opposition in India conflating the government with nation state. What do you think? Why this is happening? Are people not educated?
There are two
enough?
questions here.
Yes, 2 questions. Yeah.
Right? Let me take the first one.
Okay.
About democracies. Periodically, democracies reinvent themselves.
Okay.
Because the people's aspiration changes. Every 25 years you see the rise of another generation, which was born. Those born in 2020 are now have entered the electoral field. Now they come
Those
with
born in 2000, you mean?
2000,
yeah,
sorry.
2000, yeah.
Yeah. Then they have a very different perspective
Completely.
from those born in 1980,
Right.
those born in 1970.
Sure.
So they will have an impact. The reason why Prime Minister Modi got re-elected, and let us be very clear about it, is because he has created a welfare state for the poor. And this welfare state is above religion, caste, language, region, above geography, above history. Sometimes I would say beyond the reach of history. And the people who have benefited are grateful, rightly so.
Correct.
Right? Because they haven't seen. Why didn't anyone, Prime Ministers of India have had the capacity, right, to spend money. Why didn't anyone ever think of giving 800 million people enough to eat. Isn't that a basic right of democracy? Isn't that a non-negotiable basic right of democracy? So why didn't you do it?
Correct.
Right? And after having done it, has the economy collapsed?
No.
In fact, it's grown because you have created more capacity, in fact, among the poor.
Right.
Right?
They work better.
They work better. It's in fact, in any sense, it is a human right. Hunger cannot be an acceptable reality in the 21st century. Cannot be.
Sure.
So that is really, the welfare and its relationship with the poor is the reason why he was able to defeat an international convulsive kind of pattern.
Right.
And why he brought the pattern.
So that is absolutely clear-cut explanation of why he's come back and buck the trend, as you said.
Yeah. And as I said, this was his contribution to the Indian nation state. This is strengthening the nation state.
Right.
It is not strengthening the government or a party. It is strengthening the nation. Right? It is creating
a powerful
entity of people, and that is why people believe in their country, because the country believes in them.
True. So the second question that I was asking.
The second question is a question to be specific. Are you referring to Mr. Rahul Gandhi?
Yes, Rahul Gandhi's sort of confusing.
No, that's his statement that he's against
the state. I mean, against the nation state.
That he wants a conflict or something.
Conflict, yeah. No, he's fighting against the government, he said, but what he meant initially was...
No, you are wrong. I think he said he is fighting against the nation.
Against the state, he said. Against the state and BJP and RSS.
Yeah.
So state, I think, is conflicting it with the government.
No, it's I think that expression has two explanations, neither of which will make me very popular. It is either ignorance or stupidity.
So which one do you think?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm not into the gentleman's mind space.
Right.
I don't know, but I do know it's one of the two.
Okay.
Because if you are this level of power, do not know the difference between a government and a state, then I doubt if you can be trusted with responsibility for the state. And it's very dangerous then.
Sure.
It is very dangerous. And if you know the meaning and still say it, then I'm afraid it is political stupidity.
Okay.
Because the nation state, the Indian nation state, is like the constitution, it is above the governments.
Right.
Governments must serve it.
Yeah.
Governments come and go.
Yes.
The nation state is forever.
True. I think Atal Bihari Vajpayee said it very well. Sarkareं आती रहेंगी, sarkareं जाती रहेंगी. But the
राष्ट्र जो है
वो survive करना होगा.
वो survive करना पड़ेगा. What worries me more than this, frankly, is how careless the Congress is about it.
Which was a party which
how can the Congress be careless about this? After all, the Congress is hopefully a responsible political party, and how expedient can you get just because you believe that a certain family or whatever is your vote winner? But,
it's just political expediency or short-sightedness for a time being, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And it will cost, I think, the Congress, because I think those among the, certainly it's not just the intelligentsia which will react. People know.
Yeah, of course they know.
Yeah, every voter knows the difference.
In Hindi they say Rashtra Sarvopari hai, after all, governments come and go, like many people have said this. So let's see how it pans out, but wonderful insight into what we think, and let's see how what the future holds for all of us in the globe. But thank you for coming in and giving us this wonderful assessment of Donald Trump and the world at the moment.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Keep watching StratNews Global. You know where to reach us. Your comments are always welcome and useful for us to improve ourselves and get more important and interesting guests on our program. So we'll wait for your comments, and of course subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already, and social media handles, of course, you know where they are. So we'll wait for the next opportunity to speak to Mr. Akbar, but for the time being, it's goodbye.